India-Israel relations refers to the bilateral ties between the Republic of India and the State of Israel. The two countries enjoy an extensive economic, military, and strategic relationship. India is the largest buyer of Israeli military equipment, and Israel is the second largest defense supplier to India after Russia. From 1999 to 2009, the military business between the two nations was worth around $9 billion. Military and strategic ties between the two nations extend to intelligence sharing on terrorist groups and joint military training. As of 2014, India is the third largest Asian trade partner of Israel, and 10th largest trade partner overall. In 2014, bilateral trade, excluding military sales, stood at $4.52 billion. As of 2015, the two nations are negotiating an extensive bilateral free trade agreement, focusing on areas such as information technology, biotechnology, and agriculture. History. India's position on the establishment of the State of Israel was affected by many factors, including India's own partition on religious lines, and India's relationship with other nations. Indian independence leader Mahatma Gandhi believed the Jews had a good case in a prior claim for Israel, but opposed the creation of Israel on religious or mandated terms. India voted against the partitioning of Palestine Plan of 1947 and voted against Israel's admission to the United Nations in 1949. Various proponents of Hindu nationalism supported or sympathized with the creation of Israel. Hindu Mahasabha leader Vinayak Damodar Savarkar supported the creation of Israel on both moral and political grounds, and condemned India's vote at the UN against Israel. Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh leader Madhav Sadashiv Golwalkar admired Jewish nationalism and believed Palestine was the natural territory of the Jewish people, essential to their aspiration for nationhood. On 17 September 1950, India officially recognized the State of Israel. Following India's recognition of Israel, Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru stated, "We would have long ago, because Israel is a fact. We refrained because of our desire not to offend the sentiments of our friends in the Arab countries." Quote, in the 1950s, Israel was permitted to open a consulate in Bombay. However, the Nehru government did not want to pursue full diplomatic relations with Israel as it supported the Palestinian cause, and believed that permitting Israel to open an embassy in New Delhi would damage relations with the Arab world. From India's recognition of Israel in 1950 to the early 1990s, the relationship remained informal in nature. India's opposition to official diplomatic relations with Israel stemmed from both domestic and foreign considerations. Domestically, politicians in India feared losing the Muslim vote if relations were normalized with Israel. Additionally, India did not want to jeopardize the large amount of its citizens working in Arab states of the Persian Gulf, who were helping India maintain its foreign exchange reserves. India's domestic need for energy was another reason for the lack of normalization of ties with Israel. In terms of safeguarding the flow of oil from Arab nations, India's foreign policy goals and alliances also proved problematic to formal relations with Israel, including India's support for the pro-Palestine Liberation Organization non-aligned movement, India's tilt towards the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and India's desire to counter Pakistan's influence with the Arab states. On an ideological level, the dominant political party in India during this era, namely the Indian National Congress, opposed Israel due to the perception that it was a state based on religion, analogous to Pakistan. Although there was no formal relationship for several decades, meetings and cooperation took place between both countries, including figures such as Moshe Dayan, Israel also provided India with crucial information during its multiple wars. After decades of non-aligned and pro-Arab policy, India formally established relations with Israel in January 1992, and ties between the two nations have flourished since, primarily due to common strategic interests and security threats. Formation of Organization of Islamic Cooperation allegedly neglected the sentiments of Indian Muslims, and blocking of India by Pakistan from joining OIC is considered to be the cause of diplomatic shift. On a diplomatic level, both the countries have managed to maintain healthy relations despite India's repeated strong condemnations of Israeli military actions in Palestinian territories, which are believed by analysts to be motivated by the United Progressive Alliance government's desire for Muslim votes in India. 2014 Israel-Hamas conflict. At the height of the tension between Israel and Hamas in July, India offered a rhetorical condemnation, holding both sides responsible for erupting violence, and asked Israel to stop disproportionate use of force in Gaza, which was read by many as departure from tradition of more vocal supports for the Palestinian cause. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj insisted that there is absolutely no change in India's policy towards Palestine, which is that we fully support the Palestinian cause while maintaining good relations with Israel. Clarifying India's current position on the issue, that might sound like fence-sitting, but it is a policy shared by all Indian governments of the past 20 years following the establishment of formal diplomatic relation in 1992. Swaraj, a seasoned parliamentarian, had herself blocked the opposition demand in Rajya Sabha for passing a resolution condemning Israel for 2014 Israel-Gaza conflict by saying that India has friendly relation with both Israel and Palestine, and therefore any such move may impact its friendship negatively. Although later, in a symbolic gesture, India joined others BRICS nations in voting at the United Nations Human Rights Council for a probe into the alleged human rights violation in Gaza, which generated mixed response among media and analysts in India. When the UNHRC report alleging that Israel had committed war crimes was tabled for vote, India abstained from voting, one of 5 countries to do so. 41 nations voted in favor, and the United States was the only vote against. Israeli envoy to India Daniel Carman thanked India for not supporting what he described as another anti-Israel bashing resolution. Diplomatic visits. In 2000, Jaswant Singh became the first Indian foreign minister to visit Israel. Following the visit, the two countries set up a joint anti-terror commission. The foreign ministers of the two countries said intensified cooperation would range from counter-terrorism to information technology. In 2003, Ariel Sharon was the first Israeli prime minister to visit India. He was welcomed by the Bharatiya Janata Party-led National Democratic Alliance coalition government of India. Several newspapers expressed positive views on his visit, and Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee voiced confidence that Sharon's visit would pave the way for further consolidating bilateral ties. Sharon's visit was condemned in leftist and Muslim circles. Hundreds of supporters of India's various pro-Islamic and communist parties rallied in New Delhi. Nearly 100 Muslims were arrested. Students of Aligarh Muslim University demanded that India sever ties with Israel and increase ties with Palestine. The Hindi-language daily Navbharat Times called Sharon an important friend of India. The Hindu nationalist Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh condemned the protest against Sharon. Sharon expressed satisfaction over his talks with Indian leaders. Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee said the visit would increase ties between India and Israel. Sharon invited Vajpayee to visit Israel. Sharon said that Israelis regard India to be one of the most important countries in the world, and Vajpayee was sure that Sharon's visit would bring the two states closer together. In early 2006, Indian government ministers Sharad Pawar, Kapil Sibal and Kamal Nath visited Israel. Former Gujarat Chief Minister and the current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, has also visited Israel. Despite India's unwavering support for the Palestinian cause, Foreign Minister Adam Krishna visited Israel. Israel PM called this visit by Indian Foreign Minister a historical step forward in developing the relations between the two nations. In May 2014, after victory of Narendra Modi in 2014 general election, Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu personally congratulated Modi. Also, Narendra Modi met his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu in New York on the sideline of UN General Assembly during his U.S. visit in 2014. On the occasion of Hanukkah festival, Indian PM Modi greeted his Israeli counterpart in Hebrew language on Twitter, and then Israeli PM replied in Hindi language. Later in 2014, Indian Home Minister Rajnath Singh visited Israel to overview the border security arrangement of Israel. During his tour, he also met Israeli PM Netanyahu. In the same year, former Israeli President Shimon Peres visited India. A high-level Israeli delegation with Agriculture Minister of Israel Yair Shamir also participated in vibrant Gujarat Summit in 2015. In December 2014, a news published in The Hindu that India may end support to Palestine. In February 2015, Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon came to India. During his visit, he participated in Aero India 2015. He also met his Indian counterpart as well as Indian PM. Pranab Mukherjee became the first Indian president to visit Israel on October 13 to 15, 2015. Mukherjee was given the rare honor of addressing the Knesset. Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj visited Israel in January 2016. During the visit, she visited the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, and met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Reuven Rivlin, members of the cabinet, and the Indian Jewish communities in Israel. Military and strategic ties. India and Israel have increased cooperation in military and intelligence ventures since the establishment of diplomatic relations. The rise of Islamic extremist terrorism in both nations has generated a strong strategic alliance between the two. India recently launched a military satellite for Israel through its Indian Space Research Organization. In 1997, Israel's President Esav Weizman became the first head of the Jewish state to visit India. He met with Indian President Shankar Dayal Sharma, Vice President K. R. Narayanan and Prime Minister H.D. Devi Gowda. Weizman negotiated the first weapons deal between the two nations, involving the purchase of Barricade 1 vertically launched surface-to-air missiles from Israel. The Barricade 1 has the ability to intercept anti-ship missiles such as the Harpoon. The purchase of the Barricade 1 missiles from Israel by India was a tactical necessity since Pakistan had purchased Lockheed P-3 Orion maritime surveillance aircraft and 27 Harpoon sea-skimming anti-ship missiles from the United States. Israel was one of the selected few nations, a group that also included France and Russia, that did not condemn India's 1998 Pokhran II nuclear tests. In naval terms, Israel sees great strategic value in an alliance with the Indian Navy, given India's dominance of South Asian waters. Due Due to the great importance of maritime trade to the Israeli economy, it thus sees the potential of establishing a logistical infrastructure in the Indian Ocean with the help of the Indian Navy. In 2000, Israeli submarines reportedly conducted test launches of cruise missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads in the waters of the Indian Ocean, off the Sri Lankan coast. In 1996, India purchased 32 IAI-Searcher unmanned aerial vehicles, electronic support measure sensors and an air combat maneuvering instrumentation simulator system from Israel. Since then, Israel Aerospace Industries has serviced several large contracts with the Indian Air Force, including the upgrading of the IAF's Russian-made MiG-21 ground attack aircraft, and there have been further sales of unmanned aerial vehicles as well as laser-guided bombs. India purchased 50 Israeli drones for $220 million in 2005. India was considering buying the new Harap drone. India is also in the process of obtaining missile-firing Hermes 450s. Israel Aerospace Industries Limited signed a $2.5 billion deal with India in 2007 to develop an anti-aircraft system and missiles for the country, in the biggest defense contract in the history of Israel at the time. II CEO Yitzhak Nissan visited India to finalize the agreement with heads of the defense establishment and the country's president. II is developing the Barricade missile for the Indian Navy and Indian Air Force, which is capable of protecting sea vessels and ground facilities from aircraft and cruise missiles. The missile has a range of over 70 kilometers. The missile will replace the current obsolete Russian system used by India. On the 10th of November 2008, Indian military officials visited Israel to discuss joint weapons development projects, additional sales of Israeli equipment to the Indian military, and anti-terrorism strategies. The new round of talks was seen as a significant expansion in the Indian-Israeli strategic partnership. Following the 2008 Mumbai attacks, Israel offered a team of about 40 special operations forces and assistance in investigations. Tzipi Livni said, "If they need us, we will help where needed." Magen David Adom dispatched a team of paramedics, medics and other professionals to assist with rescue efforts in the wake of the attacks. Israeli newspapers reported that the Manmohan Singh government turned down an offer by Defense Minister Ehud Barak to send counter-terrorist units to help fight the attackers. In December 2009, Lt. Gen. Gabi Ashkenazi, Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, made a visit to India to cement the defense ties between the two countries. He pledged every help to India in fighting terrorism. In March 2011, it was reported that India would buy 8,356 Israeli Spike anti-tank missiles, 321 launch, 15 training simulators and peripheral equipment for $1 billion from Israel's Rafael Advanced Defense Systems. The deal was finalized by Prime Minister Narendra Modi after coming into office. In September 2015, the Indian government approved the Air Force's request to purchase 10 Heron-TP drones from Israel Aerospace Industries. In 2015, a delegation from Israel's Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs visited India, led by former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations Tor Gold. Shared strategic interests were discussed, including combating radical Islam, the handling of territorial disputes, and the security situation in the Middle East and South Asia. In October 2015, the Pioneer reported that India and Israel were planning to hold their first joint military exercise. The date and location were not announced. Intelligence. A Rediff story in 2003 revealed that the the Indian External Intelligence Agency Research and Analysis Wing had clandestine links with the Mossad, Israel's external intelligence agency. When RAW was founded in September 1968 by Rameshwanath Rao, he was advised by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to cultivate links with Mossad. This was suggested as a countermeasure to military links between that of Pakistan and China, as well as with North Korea. Israel was also concerned that Pakistani army officers were training Libyans and Iranians in handling Chinese and North Korean military equipment. Pakistan believed intelligence relations between India and Israel threatened Pakistani security. When young Israeli tourists began visiting the Kashmir Valley in the early 1990s, Pakistan suspected they were disguised Israeli army officers that to help Indian security forces with anti-terrorism operations. Israeli tourists were attacked, with one slain and another kidnapped. Pressure from the Kashmiri Muslim diaspora in the United States led to his release. Kashmiri Muslims feared that the attacks could isolate the American Jewish community, and result in them lobbying the U.S. government against Kashmiri separatist groups. In 1996, R.K. Jadhav, a former RAW official, had filed a disproportionate assets case in the Delhi High Court against Anand Kumar Verma, RAW chief between 1987 and 1990. Jadhav listed 8 properties that he claimed were purchased illegally by Verma using RAW's unaudited funds for secret operations. Although his petition for a CBI inquiry into Verma's properties was dismissed, Jadhav managed to obtain more information using an RTI in 2005 and filed another case in 2009. In 2013, the CBI carried out an investigation of Verma's properties. Proceedings in the Delhi High Court revealed the names of 2 companies floated by RAW in 1988: Piyush Investments and Hector Leasing and Finance Company Limited. The firms were headed by 2 senior RAW officials, V. Balachandran and B. Raman. Balachandran and Raman retired in 1994 and 1995 respectively. The companies were listed as trading houses that dealt in several kinds of minerals, automobiles, textiles, metals and spare parts, and also claimed to produce feature films. The companies purchased 2 flats in Gauri Sadan, a residential building on Haley Road, New Delhi in March 1989 for 23 lakh rupees. India Today reported that the 2 flats were RAW safe houses used as operational fronts for Mossad agents and housed Mossad station chief between 1989 and 1992. RAW had reportedly decided to have closer ties to Mossad, and the subsequent secret operation was approved by then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. India Today cites RAW insiders as saying that RAW agents hid a Mossad agent holding an Argentine passport and exchanged intelligence and expertise in operations, including negotiations for the release of an Israeli tourist by the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front in militants in June 1991. When asked about the case, Verma refused to speak about the companies, but claimed his relationship with them was purely professional. Raman stated, "Sometimes spy agencies float companies for operational reasons. All I can say is that everything was done with government approval. Files were cleared by the then Prime Minister and his Cabinet Secretary." Balachandran stated, "It is true that we did a large number of operations, but at every stage, we kept the Cabinet Secretariat and the Prime Minister in the loop." In November 2015, The Times of India reported that agents from Mossad and MI5 were protecting Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit to Turkey. Modi was on a state visit to the United Kingdom and was scheduled to attend the 2015 G20 summit in Antalya, Turkey. The paper reported that the agents had been called in to provide additional cover to Modi's security detail, composed of India's Special Protection Group and secret agents from RAW and IB, in wake of the November 2015 Paris attacks. Bilateral trade. Bilateral trade between India and Israel grew from $200 million in 1992 to $4.52 billion in 2014. As of 2014, India is Israel's 10th largest trade partner and import source, and 7th largest export source. India's major exports to Israel include precious stones and metals, organic chemicals, electronic equipment, plastics, vehicles, machines, engines, pumps, clothing and textiles, and medical and technical equipment. Israel's imports from India amounted to $2.3 billion, a 3.2% of its overall imports in 2014. Israel's major exports to India include precious stones and metals, electronic equipment, fertilizers, machines, engines, pumps, medical and technical equipment, organic and inorganic chemicals, salt, sulfur, stone, cement, and plastics. Israeli exports to India amounted to $2.2 billion, a 3.2% of its overall exports in 2014. In 2007, Israel proposed starting negotiations on a free trade agreement with India, and in 2010, then Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh accepted that proposal. The agreement is set to focus on many key economic sectors, including information technology, biotechnology, water management, pharmaceuticals, and agriculture. In 2013, then Israeli Minister of Economy Naftali Bennett projected a doubling of trade from $5 to $10 billion between the two countries, if a free trade agreement was successfully negotiated. As of 2015, negotiations on a free trade agreement continue, with both countries considering negotiating a more narrow free trade agreement on goods, followed by separate agreements on trade in investment and services. Israeli imports from India amounted to $2 billion, a 3.5% of its overall imports in 2015. The 10 major commodities exported from India to Israel were gems, precious metals and coins, $973.6 million. Organic chemicals, $296.5 million. Electronic equipment, $121.2 million. Medical, technical equipment, $59.3 million. Plastics, $56.4 million. Vehicles, $44.4 million. Machinery, $38.1 million. Other textiles, worn clothing, $31.8 million. Knit crochet clothing, $31.6 million. Clothing, $30.8 million. Israeli exports to India amounted to $2.3 billion, a 3.8% of its overall exports in 2015. The 10 major commodities exported from Israel to India were gems, precious metals and coins, $933.7 million. Electronic equipment, $389.3 million. Medical, technical equipment, $180.7 million. Iron and steel products, $170.3 million. Fertilizers, $157 million. Machinery, $110.9 million. Organic chemicals, $69.8 million. Other chemical goods, $44.2 million. Inorganic chemicals, $43.6 million. Plastics, $29.5 million.